Hello, hello. Welcome to the second part of 4 episodes in our series for job hunters. Last week, we spent our time discussing how we should shape a resume, and we were sharing our advice, especially for new graduates from a university level. So those getting close to graduating with their first degree, those who have recently graduated, and maybe young adults who already have their degree but are looking to move forward in their career and need to polish up their resume and polish up their job hunting skills. That's who we are doing this series for. Other people can use it, of course, and we would welcome getting feedback from you all. Please drop your feedback for us in the comments when you look at the replay of this video. So we have had one session so far, as I said, and that focused on resume writing. And the reason that I put that first in the series of 4 is to give time to develop the first draft resume and start improving it as we go through the series. And we are going to come back around next week to talk about how to shape that cover letter once the content of the resume is known. Today, however, we are going to jump right into the one that may make people the most nervous, and that is, how do I prepare myself for an interview? We have Kalim here with us today. And Kalim, I want to thank you for showing up live. It's so much more enjoyable and interesting to make a presentation like this when you have somebody to interact with. So although I have to ask that you mute yourself during this part of the presentation, I will be opening up the discussion to you once my part is finished to let you share any comments, ask any questions, request any clarification. So please make a note if things come up that you want to ask about. So when you have an interview, there is a dual purpose to that interview. The interview is so that your interviewer or interviewers, that panel, is able to assess whether you are the right fit for their company or for their client's company. And the interview also serves for you, the interviewee, to assess whether it is the right fit as well for you. So you definitely want to make sure that you don't take the first job that's offered to you if that job doesn't feel like it's the right place for you to go. And I specifically say this because I've known so many people, and I've been one of those people as well, who have gone to a job and found that there is such a mismatch between your values and the company's values, and that the practices that you are asked to engage in may not feel as comfortable because they don't match the practices that you believe you should be using. So sometimes it's a matter of ethics, and sometimes it's just a matter of what the requirements of the job are. Maybe you want a job where you have a lot more say in the steps that you follow, a lot more decision-making space. And if you take a job where actually you are directed and somebody maps out every step and you are highly accountable for step-by-step being completed, somebody who is looking for more autonomy in a role will be totally unsatisfied. And somebody who is looking for more guidance, who doesn't have the higher level confidence in themselves, might be looking for more guidance. And if they take a job that requires them to make a lot more decisions, to have a lot less clarity given to them in framing problems, and to be a problem solver and a thinker on their feet, that person may not find it an appropriate job fit. So it's very, very important for you to be evaluating fit just as hard as your interviewers are evaluating you for fit. Don't ever forget that, because that's really important. So today, let's start imagining that you have just received a call and you've been offered a position on their short list, and they say to you, come in and see us this week, Friday, and let's have a sit-down interview and see whether we are the right fit. What do you begin to do? Do you just pray really hard every night and say, dear Lord, I know that you will lead me into the right place? And is that all the prep that you need? I would definitely say that that is not enough. Certainly mindset, belief, faith, trust, hope, all those things are important. You have to be positive, because that positivity comes through in your confidence, in the choice of words you make, in the whole body language that you exude. And so that's important. But what builds confidence up is preparation. And preparation requires you to, 1, know yourself. 2, know your job. 3, assess what you have that will satisfy the requirements of the job, and build some responses that would help you if questions like that come. Now, building responses, some candidates believe that what that entails is writing down every question, writing down full responses, and cramming them off, learning them off by rote, word for word. That is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. If you do that, you're going to come across as a robot, as an automaton. And that's going to really turn off your panel, right? Have you ever looked at somebody make a presentation and that presentation was repeated word for word because they had crammed it off, and you felt the lack of passion, commitment, enjoyment of what they do? That's what's going to happen if you learn off your responses, if you don't really think and really engage with the interviewers and with the question on the spot, in the moment. So an interview has to feel like, and it has to be, a genuine, intimate conversation between the individuals at the table. However, that interview must be supported by a foundation of information that you have pre-prepared, right? So let me give you some guidance as to what some of that information would be. And you may want to take some notes. The first thing I said that you need to know is who you are. So you want to, and you would have engaged in understanding and in listing out who you are to some extent, based on what I told you last week when we talked about how to develop a resume. I mentioned that you want to be able to highlight your knowledge and qualifications, your skills, which is your ability to actually do or practice in your field. It could be technical skills, manual skills, logic skills, communication skills, and the list, IT skills, and the list goes on and on. And 3, attitude. And to me, attitude trumps all. If I have people who are equivalent on knowledge and skills, and in some cases, even if I have somebody who is superior in knowledge, but somebody else has a better attitude, somebody is willing to keep learning, to keep trying, to keep extending themselves and stretching, to keep supporting others on a team. If somebody else is very positive and very outgoing and a wonderful, joyful member to work with on a team, those things count for something. And sometimes a company will choose to get rid of the smartest person if that person is a disruptive person. I didn't say disruptor, but I said disruptive person. So if this person causes conflict, if this person is always stirring up trouble, if this person is always causing the team to break apart and fight, then top management is going to have a discussion about whether this person actually brings as much value to the team as they thought, based on intellect or based on qualification. So you want to make sure that all these elements, knowledge, skills, and attitude, shine from you as you do the interview. The question is, how do you make yourself shine in an interview without coming across as a bragger, as somebody who is so full of him or herself that nobody's going to be able to stand to be around them? That's a sticky place to be, because the job that you have in an interview is to shine a spotlight on yourself, is to share how strong you are and how much promise you have. So how do you share all of these shiny things about yourself without turning people off? Well, the biggest approach that I find works, the best approach that works, is storytelling. And if you've spent any time with me in a class or in training or in coaching, you will know that part of what I use to do my training and upskilling is the sharing of stories. Stories illustrate problems that you might have faced, opportunities that you might have had, approaches that you might have used, feelings that you might have had, and evidence that you have tried new things or directions that you tried to go in, and stories get to show how you succeeded, how you awed people, how you served, how you grew, how you kept learning, how you kept searching, how you kept advancing job after job, how you kept pulling a team together. And because you are telling a story, it does not feel so much like you are bragging if you craft the stories well. So you want your stories to tell the interviewer what you are bringing to them, how you can make a difference to their company. And how you tell them that is that you take a story that has a similar application to one that they will need. And as you tell the story, you know in their mind they are going, oh wow, we could use this person to help us with our social media account. Oh wow, we could use this person to talk to our high level professional clients, because they have such a skill and they also highly educated so that they can. So you want to drop enough value in your story. It's breadcrumbs. You drop those breadcrumbs in your story and you just seed those things and you let the interviewer follow the breadcrumbs to what you could do for them. That's one way. Second way is you actually tell them. You actually tell them, well, here's what I could do for you, or here are the ideas I have about the value I can bring, right? So you mix and match approaches, of course, because if I only tell stories, that will become boring really fast. So I do a direct response to some questions. I tell stories for some questions. I use analogies for some questions, right? So it's like if you were walking down the road and you observed X, Y, and Z going on at the side, and you see somebody fixing this problem in this way, maybe you could learn from that about how to use their approach in something else. So you use a similar situation or you use a parallel situation, you draw that to their attention and you show them how you've learned from this and you'd be able to apply it somewhere else. So let's talk about the thing that stresses interviewees the most, which is what kinds of questions might people ask when I come to an interview? One of the first, if not the absolute first thing that you'll be asked is, oh, hello, can you tell me about yourself? There are two main reasons that people will ask you to tell them about yourself. One is just to get comfortable. You are the person that you know best. You are the topic that you should be able to talk about easiest. So when the interviewer asks you, can you tell me about yourself? The interviewer is trying to give you a quick win. So it gives you a chance to not have to stress about if you're giving the right answer or the wrong answer. And he lets you just be yourself and just relax into that seat where you are across from them being evaluated. So take it as it is meant, which is a welcome to you, relax and let's chat. The second reason that you are asked to tell me about yourself when I do an interview is because I genuinely want to understand you, the person, you, the professional, and a little bit about whether I think you look like the right fit. So if you just say, well, my name is John, and I grew up in San Francisco, and I'm 24 years old, and I want a job with you as your marketing intern. Does that seem like you are particularly good at communicating and building relationships? I would think not, because it sounds very stilted. It doesn't build much connection, and you have not really let yourself relax into giving this answer. So you are a human being and you want to show the person, you let the person that you are shine. If you are comfortable enough, crack a little joke, smile, right? If you are not exactly the most humorous person, don't try to force fit humor, all right? But you can be a genuine person. People sense when you are being just a nice person and they like you. So tell me where you come from. Tell me your name. Tell me what you have always enjoyed as you grew up, and tell me why you chose to do what you did at UE. Tell me whether that is still your passion and what you really want to do with that and how this job really fits. Tell me about your family background and the service that you've done, the jobs that you've held, and that you really want to make a difference in a particular field because of some challenge you may have had, right? So for me, I do a lot of service in the area of helping special needs parents because I am a special needs parent. So if somebody asks me, tell me about you, that somehow is going to come into the story of who I am, and it's going to be used to say, so a big part of me and a big part of my motivation is to help to make other special needs parents' lives easier. Because I realize how challenging it is from the first 9 years of my own journey as a parent of a special needs daughter. That builds human connection. This is not about a sub-story, but it is about a human connection. I'm showing you a vulnerability in me. I'm showing you a true part of my life. I'm telling you what lights me up. And then I tell you how that connects to what this job is going to mean to me. So in working in leadership and management for this company, I would love to help to increase your corporate social responsibility efforts to include service to an underserved population, which is special needs people, right? So you start tying in your big picture, because your big picture is valid, and you need to show them how your big picture fits with their big picture. There's an overlap between the two. So when they ask you, tell me about yourself, you just relax and you just tell them. And if they want to ask any more details, they will. A lot of the time, they will ask you questions like, tell me a few of your strengths, or tell me 3 of your strengths. Most respondents know, most interviewees know how to answer that. We're good at listing off our strengths. We've prepared to talk about our strengths. Many years ago, it used to be shocking when they then said, so tell me about your weaknesses, or tell me about one weakness. By now, most candidates, if you do a search for interview questions on, you do a Google search, you will find that they also list, tell me a weakness that you have. And people then go, I don't know what to say. I'm scared to admit to having weaknesses. But we're all human, and therefore we all have many weaknesses. I would hazard to say we don't only have one, we have many. So my advice about how to answer this is to be honest. Tell them one of your weaknesses. Maybe you are an overachiever. Maybe you're a perfectionist. That's a common one that people like to talk about. And that is a too safe one, because it says, I'll do a perfect job for you, right? However, you could say that if you tell them, well, I sometimes don't know really when to cut off on work. And I've in the past taken work home and not given myself enough life balance, so that I have the tendency to overstress and overrun and not pause enough to see to my own self-care. So if we identify things like that, you can then continue and say, however, I've really been working on that. And you tell them how you've reduced your tendency to do that and how you've come to find better life balance while still trying to do the best job you can for your employer, right? So some weaknesses that you might mention might be that the perfectionism. It might be impatience. It might be that you tend to want to take on far too much when you're on a team, and you realize that you really have to dial back and respect every member of the team and allow people to work at their own pace, to use their own skills, and it doesn't always have to align with the way you think it needs to be done. However, if you have a leadership role, you know that you will actually help to set out the tasks, etc., etc. So it's important that you illustrate your competence, but you honestly also illustrate exactly what they asked. If they asked you for a weakness, you have to genuinely tell them, share with them about a weakness, a current weakness that you have, and that you've recognized that this is a weakness, and that you actually have a plan to try to move forward from there, to improve, to improve, to improve. Some other hard questions that come up when you are preparing for your interview would be, tell me about a time that you failed. These are tough questions because they back you in a corner and they make you admit to your weaknesses, right? What do they want? So ask yourself when you get a tough question, why are they asking me such a hard question? Do they want to celebrate that I failed, or do they want to see that I went beyond the failure? And that's exactly why they're asking it. We want to see, when you failed, did you feel so much embarrassment you ran away, you quit the job, you got so angry, you fell out, you insulted the boss, and you left the work, you had a big altercation with people? We need to know these kinds of things because they are looking at your attitude and your skills and everything. You're looking at your maturity there. So what do they want? What does anybody want when we are talking about failure? We want to see that even when things go south, even when failure comes around for you, you are able to be mature enough to say, I took stock of what had happened. I looked at the facts and about what was going wrong because of this failure, and I helped to put it back on track. And then I engaged in reflection to see what I should have done differently. I engaged in reflection to see how I was feeling. And I then decided on an action plan to move myself forward in terms of skills, in terms of attitudes, in terms of resilience to try again. Those are some of the things that I would suggest you build into a little story. And the little story is like when you used to write an essay about the day that I failed. If you were writing an essay like that, your story would be, here is my situation, here is the event that happened, here was what led to it, and here were the consequences of that failure. Then what did I do in response? Further to the short-term response, fixing things on the spot, what did I do for longer-term responsiveness? What did I do so that I grew from it and I became a better person who would not make certain mistakes again, who developed better attitudes and better skills and knew how to care for others better? Those kinds of things are the kinds of thoughts that you need to have as you craft your little story. And then when they ask similar questions, you can then say, oh yes, I remember prepping this story around this event. I could actually tell them about that story to answer this other question that has come up. All right. So when you prepare stories, they aren't stories that are prepared for only one use. These are the stories of your life. These are the stories of your experience. And then you draw on your stories in order to illustrate your skills, your competencies, your learning, your growth, your failures, your positivity, etc., when the right opportunity comes to highlight those, right? Another thing they might ask, and it's similar to a time you failed, is tell me about a time you handled conflict. Maybe you had conflict in a team. Maybe your boss hurt your feelings or was abusive to you in some way. How did you handle it? Maybe a coworker was bullying you. Maybe it was a team issue. What did you do? What happened? How did you respond? What did you realize was going on? What was your part in it? Do you think you are blameless, or was there a part of the problem that you attribute to yourself? And what did you do about it so that as a good leader, even if you were not a manager in the company, you still are always a good leader, right? So as a good leader, what did you do to smooth over that conflict, or to take some kind of, get some disciplinary action? Because in some cases it might involve things that need discipline, such as drugs, or such as some kind of violence that happened, or such as a health and safety in problem that came up. So what did you do? How did you lean on your actual skills in your subject area or in your field of practice? And how did you then get resolution? Another one is, tell me about a time that you disagreed with a decision at work. Tell me about a time you disagreed with your manager. Tell me about a time that you had a falling out with or had a disagreement with a customer. These are sticky ones because people want to see, do you know how to respect? Are you likely to respect or disrespect a customer? So you want to shape up responses to these. Now, sometimes you might say, well, I've never had such an occurrence in my life. However, there was a time that I went to the grocery and I did have a falling out with a lady in the line. And here's what happened, and here's how I dealt with it. So you can ask yourself, okay, why are they asking me this question? They want to see my conflict resolution skills. They want to see my communication skills. They want to see how gentle I can be even in times of crisis. They want to see my ability to think when there's a disaster or when there's a crisis. Figure out why they are asking you a particular question. And if you don't have a true story or a decent response, then you say, listen, I really don't have a story that I could tell you. I can't tell you about a time like that because I haven't had a time like that. However, I have had this experience, and this experience might give you the kind of response, the kind of insight into me and my skills that you want. Can I tell this one to you? And chances are they'll say, sure, go ahead. And you tell them that story and you illustrate the skill that you believe they're looking to assess in you. I hope this is being useful to you all. Kalim, if you want to open up the mic, let me know. Is this working for you? Does this give you some tips that would help you?
Yes, miss.
Anything specific to those things that we've talked about so far that you want me to give some clarity on?
Just one thing that like for me personally, all my experiences has just been in academia in UE.
Right.
How do I use that in a professional environment?
Okay, so in the same way as I told you in the resume, there were so many experiences you had while doing projects in companies as a part of your courses. And you could take those projects that were done in companies and say they are work relevant experience. That's one way, right? Your projects gave you experiences at workplaces. They gave you opportunities to do analysis, opportunities to see weaknesses in the way leadership or management was practiced, etc., right? The other thing that they did is one of the things that a lot of students do not like is group work, right, Kalim? And why people don't like group work is because you don't have control over everybody in the group, right? So there will always be some people who work very, very hard and some people who want to be free riders in the group. Agreed?
Yeah.
And therefore, you learn a lot in that group setting. You learn about communication. You learn about forming, norming, storming. Remember? Forming, storming, norming, and performing. The steps of group work, the stages of group work. You learn about conflicts and negotiation and leadership. You learn all of these things from group exercises. And so you could actually talk. If somebody says, tell me about a time you handled conflict. You have examples like that. And you can talk about a time that conflict came up and what you did to help to resolve it. And you could also talk about a time conflict came up and you actually failed. You didn't do it so good because you were now learning. And here's what you learned as a result, so that the next time conflict came up, this was the new way that you approached it and you found that resolution was arrived at much, much more easily. Right? The other way that you can get experience to share when you're coming up with stories is from your life. You don't have to have work experience to be able to make your stories and tell true stories. We go to the grocery, we go out to shops, and we see how managers interact with employees, right? We see how employees interact with each other. We see how employees interact with customers, right? And each one of those observed interactions is a story that we've witnessed. So which of those stories illustrates things that you get to then say, well, I once observed this happening and I saw this conflict play out, and I remember thinking that that was such a challenge. Had I been a manager in that situation, I wondered how I would deal with it. I think this would have been the right way to do it. But what I noticed the manager did was a different set of steps. And by observing him and comparing what I had thought was the ideal, I actually grew my understanding of management practice, because now I realize that these additional 2 steps he took made the employee feel more valued. Does that make sense, Kaleem?
Yes, miss.
So I don't want you to go to an interview and feel that you have nothing to talk from, because you have 20 plus years of life experience. You have interactions in your family. You have conflicts with your parents. That is like conflict with management, right? You are the employee, they are management. When you have that kind of conflict, do you know how to behave? Do you sometimes feel you live in an autocratic place? Is that how your family is? Or is your family a democratic kind of, do they use a democratic kind of leadership approach? Is it what kind of communication style do your parents use, et cetera, et cetera? And you could reflect on things like that. Now, if you actually share, well, in one example, I actually looked at my parents as my managers, and I looked at myself as the employee, as the intern. And you reflect a true story back to the interviewers. The interviewers actually might have a good little chuckle at that, because it's rather funny to hear somebody talking about the family like an organization, and yet a family is an organization. And there are many of the same learnings in running that organization. So you have many, many stories that come just from your life, from your family, and from little jobs, or even if you had memberships in the UE Management Student Society or any other society, you've had interactions with groups. And so you can draw stories from those things as well. So I hope those are helpful to you, given your particular situation. So let's move on. Other questions that the interview panel is likely to ask would revolve around: how much does the interviewee know about us? How interested is the interviewee in us? How much of a detail-oriented person is this person? Because we want people who are going to be diligent. We want people who don't only look for the easy way forward, who are willing to go and put in some effort to learn, to grow, etc. And so one of the ways that they will find out some of this is by asking, so tell me, what do you know about our company? Tell me, what do you know about this job? And if you only rattle back to them what was on the company website and what was in the job vacancy posting, then they'll say, well, he's aware, but he's only aware of the basics. Well, it doesn't seem that she did too much background research. She must not be too enthusiastic about this job. Well, we aren't too enthusiastic about her because we have not seen any effort to learn more, to dig deeper, right? If you truly are excited about a job, you are going to go and find, were they ever Were there ever any articles written in the newspapers, any interviews with managers from our company? Are there any pieces of information, any feature articles, any magazine articles that show up, any interviews on YouTube or on the news with anybody associated with our company? Have we ever had customer complaints? Are there ratings, web pages about our product or about our company? Has this person read about those things? Because if you go into an interview and when they ask you if there is a customer conflict, how would you handle it? They could also ask you hypotheticals. Doesn't have to be tell me about a time you had a customer conflict or you witnessed one. They could say, what if there is a conflict with a customer, what would you do? And you could actually use this opportunity to impress them without bragging. And here's how you do it. Well, I was doing some research into your company, and I noticed that there is a product review page for your company, your product called acrylic paint set number 1, 2, 3. And when I read the reviews for the acrylic paint set number 1, 2, 3, I saw that there were 25% of dissatisfied customers. So only 75% of customers rated it 3 to 5 stars out of 5 stars. And 25% of people rated it 1 or 2 stars. And there were even comments where a couple of people said if they could have rated it 0 stars, they would have. Now, what that shows is that you have really done some homework and dug deep. But then you're not trying to shame them. So you could say, when I read the positive reviews, it showed that there were so many good things about this product. And so it made me wonder, why would there also be people who hated the product? And when I read those, I realized that the people were giving low ratings because they seemed to be misusing the product. I think that maybe they needed watercolor paints and they were actually purchasing acrylic paints. And these two types of paints, from the research that I've done to learn more about your product, I realized that watercolor paints are very different from acrylic paints in the following ways. So if I had a customer situation come up because of this, I would seek to clarify why the customer has the problem. I would seek to ensure that the customer actually did choose the right product. And then I would try to educate the customer and maybe give them a replacement, but give them the right type instead. So I would offer to the customer a different type of paint that suits what they need. And that's how we get to say it. And you really wow your interview panel that way, because what you've just shown is that you have educated yourself on their products. But beyond that, you've been such a go-getter that you've gone to find out how do their products work for customers. What problems do customers find? What do customers like about the products? And you've been thinking about how you could solve the problem for the company if problems come up. What a wonderful employee you would be. You've just sold yourself to them in a very, very endearing way that has built their confidence in you before they've even talked about, should we hire you? So I hope that that gives you some ideas about how you could also engage in developing your answers and in highlighting how much work you put on the back end that they may never see. Right? So you can mention things like, I actually saw that there were a few articles about you all in the daily newspapers. And when I read up about it, it said that during the COVID pandemic, you could not bring in your containers. And for that reason, you had actually developed relationships with local artisans who were making local paints for you. That is the kind of depth that everybody on that panel is going to be wowed by, because that shows that you understand supply chain. It shows that you really know how to do your homework. It shows that you are nothing like I'm going to sit down and wait for somebody to tell me what to do. I am actually going to go and figure things out and bring solutions to my manager and be a problem solver. What a wonderful team member that sounds like. So basically, you want to shape up answers that prepare you, or lists that prepare you in case they ask, or somehow embedded in their questions will be this question: what is it that you can do for us? Why should I hire you? What's in it for us if we hire you? What is it that you are going to bring to the table that we do not already have? All of these things are going to be answered if you give them answers like what I've started to share with you. Another difficult question that you might find might be, why are you leaving the job? If you, of course, have had a job before. Don't lie to them, but don't, as Trinidadians say, don't bad talk the people you're coming from. So you can say, my boss and I had a conflict. We had different values, and my boss thought that we had to do everything in order to prevent customer dissatisfaction. I, however, thought that sometimes if the customer is dissatisfied, we need to acknowledge to the customer, we are sorry they are dissatisfied, but we are going to have to take a couple of weeks to work this problem through, because a quick fix is not really going to fix the problem for him. Not everything is going to be an easy answer. So be as honest as possible, but don't badmouth your old boss, because however you treat your old employer, the new employer knows that's likely how you're going to treat them. That's how you're going to speak about them if you move on from them. They want somebody they can respect and who they know will respect them. What if they ask you, so how is it that you are now 22 years old and you still have no work experience? That's a tight one. That's a hard question. So what do you answer? Well, you can answer that you're at home, you all have certain needs, and so you've chosen to help out at home, help out with the home business, go to semester 3 classes so that you could graduate earlier. You decide. So that's what you do, right? You have to give honest answers and respectful answers. Okay. Other quick questions that I want to suggest to you: what's your work style? What's your management style? What's your leadership style? What's your follower style? What do you like to do outside of work? Work up your answers to these things, because all of these show more of who you are, and it shows that you are aware, that you have made conscious choices that have crafted your approach and your beliefs. Your beliefs and your behaviors have been shaped over time through reflection, through reading, through a conscious decision, through building up your practice. And you show all of that by having reflected on it and prepared before. Okay, so before we end today's session, I do want to talk about something that comes at the very beginning of our interview. And that is, how do you actually show up for the interview? So interviews happen usually face-to-face, in person. But during this pandemic, a lot of interviews have happened online. So you might be still asked in some cases to come in and meet with your interviewer face-to-face, and they'll have social distancing in place, and you might have to use a mask and so on. But most interviews are going to be done like this, maybe on Zoom or some other teleconferencing method where you all are physically distant and you all are using technology to connect you to have a conversation. If I show up to the interview in a t-shirt, will the interviewer be impressed? And the answer is no, because you want to show respect for the interview panel. But respect for the interview panel is shown by you having done your homework as to how to dress. If it is a construction worker that they're looking to hire, and everybody is going to be dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, or jeans and a polo shirt, and you dress in a three-piece suit for your interview, that may not be appropriate. So you need to dress appropriately for the job you are applying for. You might want to wear a shirt, a tie, a jacket if you are a male and you are going to an interview. For a woman, you might be wearing a jacket as well, and you might wear a skirt or pants. If there are certain colors that you think they would appreciate, then you could wear those colors. If there are certain colors that you feel totally put you off, for example, my sister would never wear a red jacket. It's just not her style at all. She'd be very, very uncomfortable. You want to make sure that you dress in a way that you feel comfortable, right? And you want to dress in a way that looks professional, that looks appropriate to your interview panel. You did not notice me on a device, typing on a computer or looking at a device while doing this presentation. Had I been distracted and trying to do something while doing an interview, that would be rude. Now, we live in an age where often people are multitasking. You're having a meeting with somebody and you're typing a message down here, and you're looking down every now and again and you're doing that. Do not do that in an interview. 100% of your attention goes this way. Yes, you can break eye contact and so on, but your attention is here. You do not use a device secondary to what is happening on the screen, which is the interview. Unless, of course, you say to them, actually, I have that document here on my device. If you give me a minute, let me pull it up and I'll read a portion from you. Now that the device is a part of what's happening on the screen, that's fine. But you acknowledge it to them, you ask them permission, you let them know what you're doing. And that is respectful. Eye contact. Eye contact still matters. And if you are nervous, you still need to have eye contact. If I were talking to you like this and I stayed serious the whole time and I stared you down, that would be very, very hard for anybody to enjoy. So you want to have a relaxed expression. You want to smile every now and again. You want to acknowledge, well, Mr. Johnson just said this, and I was thinking about that. So while, even though we're talking about this, I want to include a little bit about what Mr. Johnson just said. And you connect the stories together, right? Because it shows that after I move on from this question, something still was of interest to me. And I kept thinking about it. So further to what I just said, I have some further thoughts and I want to share it with you. I'm a thinker. I'm a communicator. I don't just deal with something and move on. I am a reflective enough person that once in a while, I'll come back and ask questions if I don't know. I'll come back and give my 2 cents because I know that my opinion is part of why you're going to hire me. And so I'm willing to speak up. I'm willing to be seen. I am shy, but I'm willing to try and extend myself, right? So yes, put on a little bit of makeup to help you to look more professional if that is you. really what you want to do is represent yourself. I would say don't overdo it with the makeup, because then that could actually be a barrier between you and connection with the others. Right? That's if you're a lady most times. I've heard people say that if you have tattoos, you try to cover them up, or like wear a long sleeve jacket so that tattoos will not show if you have them on your arms or your neck or something. I've also seen a lot of girls who would, you don't use sleeveless clothes, you don't use plunging necklines, etc. You sort of are moderate in the way you dress, respectful and business-like in the way you dress and in the way you carry yourself. All right. And when you greet people, if it's face-to-face, you want to have a nice firm handshake, nice eye contact, introduce yourself. Hello, I am Masha Natai Balkisun. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you for this interview. I've worked with the information that you've asked for. If there's anything else that you need, don't hesitate to let me know, or hello or good morning. And whatever you do, if it's a face-to-face, you wait for them to invite you to sit. You don't just pull up a chair and sit. All right, that's basic courtesy. You wait for them to invite you to sit. You wait for them to call you to come into the room. Wait for them to say, have a seat. Smile at them, nod, make sure you have eye contact. Small talk a little bit if they're interested in small talking, right? What else? If it is on Zoom, still eye contact, still a smile, still introduce yourself, still say hello and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. All right. So Kalim, let me open up this to you again. Are there any other questions, any comments that you'd like to share before we round this session out?
No, Miss, my two main concerns was that everything for me was just academic, as well as being the age that I am without any work experience, and you answered those questions.
Yeah, I want you to remember that you will never have this problem again, right? So this is just a temporary setback, and you are not the only person in this situation. Many other graduates don't have work experience and feel like there's this big gap in their resume, and there's a gap when they go to the interview. I've tried to give you a lot of tips to get experience and to get stories to help you to bridge that gap. You just need to be yourself, be engaging, be honest, be authentic, right? And your very positive attitude is going to come right through. You will find the right first job, and from there, it will just be on to the next thing and the next thing. And it doesn't even mean that it has to be onto a different job, but you could get promotions from within as well. All right. So Kalim, I want to say thank you for being here with me live. And to those who are watching the replay, please drop us in the comments some feedback on what part of this interview has been the most useful to you. And feel free also to share any questions you have so that I could come back on and assist. All the best to you all, and I'll see you next week, Wednesday, on this same Zoom link for the live session number 3 that will talk about writing your cover letter. Or for those who prefer, I'll see you on the replay of the next session. Bye-bye.
Yes, before you leave,
yeah, sure.
Over the week, I worked on my resume and one